Good evening, televiewers. You're welcome to Prime Hour on My Media Prime. This day we are going to be looking at the conflicts ongoing in the southwest and northwest region, asking the question as to how to find common grounds among the stakeholders in this conflict. How do we shift our current positions so that the killings can finally end and then the people breathe sigh of relief for an end to the conflict. We are going to be discussing this with our panelists who are seated already in the house. Dr. Nick Ngwanyam is a militant of the CPDM party. He is a social entrepreneur and an educationist par excellence. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you very much, and good evening to our listeners. It's a very exciting topic. I hope we will be able to share some information with everyone so that we really get to that path of peace.
Also with us this evening is Ba Akwen Nadia. She is one of the vice presidents of the PCRN movement led by Honorable Cabral Libi. She is in charge of the ladies of the diaspora. Akwen, we're glad to have you also.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. Good evening to my co-panelists. Good evening to all Cameroonians. Good evening to all the militants of the CPNR political parties scattered around the continental globe. I want to send a special condolence to our fallen hero of the political scene, Paul-Henri Kinge, who died on the 22nd of this month. You know, it's a pathetic situation, and, you know, the political scene of Cameroon has lost a great person who has influenced the political scene of Cameroon in a positive way. He was an activist, a humanitarian, and a father of the people of Njombe Penja. You know, I listened to him once when he said that even Jesus Christ cannot beat him to an elections in Njombe Penja. It means that he really was close to his population, and this is like a food for thought to all the political members or the political figures in Cameroon to be able to emulate the attitude of this fallen hero, to know that he was very close to his population and his population mourned him, because Mr. Com is not every death that is been mourned. Some deaths are celebrated. So I think that Paul-Henri Kinge died as a hero who felt at the battlefield. I send my condolences to the immediate family and to the whole family of Njombe Penja and Cameroon at large. Thank you.
Also with us is Fa Elvis Tayon. He is the Deputy Secretary for Communication for the CRM movement, led by Professor Maurice Kamto. We're glad to have you two with us this evening.
Thanks very much, Leo. It's my pleasure meeting the level-headed panelists we have here. Greetings to Professor Maurice Kamto and to all the members of the CRM party, especially those who have been incarcerated in the prisons, various prisons across the country. Talking about Professor Alain Foguet and Olivier Bibon-Nissak and a host of others who needs to be free and freed indeed. It's my pleasure being here today, especially when we talk about issues in Boya, where the land saga is on, with Kona coming in. Of course, we decided to put in place the birth of a new association that's bringing together realtors, that is real estate agents from the northwest and the southwest, with, you know, Property Home, Mr. Shu, and also a host of other digital renters who are coming together with Far Real Estate and a host of others to make sure that we get a convenient association that will be able now to prop into land issues before they are being put into the market, to avoid the unforeseen circumstances as CONAC is currently propping in for issues that appear not to be too clear. So I think with all of that, we're glad that we are here, Mr. Liu, and we'll be contributing our modest contributions for nation building, so to say.
Okay, we are looking at finding a common ground to end the southwest and northwest killings. Why the reluctance by parties involved in the conflict? In the context that we find ourselves, Dr. Nick Ngwanyam, what would mean finding a common ground? Because we're just talking about a conflict that has been prolonged for some 4, getting to 5 years now. We're talking about common ground for persons involved. What do we really mean by this?
Common ground means we should get to that place where we find peace, where everybody feels at home, and where the violence stops. It's very important that we get to that place, otherwise we'll just be foolish. You know, like I think I was reading on social media today, if I pluck your eye, you pluck my eye, I pluck your ear, you pluck my ear, at the end of the day we end up as a nation of very stupid people. And when you go to find out what is pushing people to behave like that, there's nothing behind it but greed. It's just unnecessary greed, empty ego, and things that don't really matter. And there comes a time when you really have to sit down and find out what does it profit me to kill another person? What does it profit me to burn someone else's house? What does it profit me to hurt another person? And life is so simple. And look, we are in the season of Lent now, and we are in the Holy Week. And yesterday was the Palm Sunday, a Sunday of victory over evil. And so we should go beyond just going for Stations of the Cross and really find out what it's all about. It's about human relationships. It's about relationships with ourselves. When I say ourselves, I mean, okay, I'm Nick Ngwanyam. I have to have a relationship with myself, with my spirit, and then have a relationship with other people in the community, have a relationship with my God, and then put this together to make sense. And the bottom line is love. Once there's no love, when there's no truth, and people are greedy and selfish, then we are bound to suffer. So we have to do something and bring a sense of justice into the nation, love to the nation, truth to the nation, truth to the human beings, truth to the families, and make sure that we really address the problems. And the good news is that there will be a dialogue. There's going to be a dialogue, a sincere and a true dialogue, as it is supposed to be. There's going to be reconciliation in the nation, and there's going to be unity. There's going to be unity, and this is going to happen whether people like it or not. And it doesn't matter whether you are to the left or to the right. That is going to happen, and it's going to be. And the international community will come in. And I'm saying so because there might be some people out there in the diaspora who are singing their own song. They say, we will not do this, we will not do that. There comes a time when what you think doesn't matter, and you have to do what the rest of the people think.
Okay, good evening to you, Bakala Foncha, watching with us, Roland Fongu Mudeson, and to you, Eze Obina Ezekuche, writing from Iraq, and to you, Mbela Bruno. Good evening to you, and Samuel Tita, watching from Dubai. But Nadia, why are we still holding similar positions to what we had in 2016, 2017?
Well, Mr. Leo, to me, I think that it is because those that are involved, directly or indirectly in this thing, haven't come to what I call compromise, forgiveness, and tolerance. You know, for these things to end, we need to come to a compromise. Both parties need to compromise. You need to give up. Even if you're right, you need to give up, because nothing is worth killing someone. Nothing is worth a life. You need to forgive, because for we to come and sit down on a round table and discuss, we need to forgive each other, and we need to tolerate. When I talk of tolerance, it means that someone might be wrong, but you tolerate that person. So I think that for this crisis to end, we need forgiveness, we need tolerance, and we need a compromise. Okay.
It's because parties have not come to that consciousness,
sure,
that we need to forgive one another. Is it not also pride? You know, it is difficult to calm down a high horse. Everybody wants to win.
Well, Mr. Com, that's very true, because, you know, those that are up there, it's difficult for them to come down. But I think that it is those that are up there that need to bring the smaller people to their own. Because, you know, you might say that you're reasoning. I think that those that are up there, they are those that have all their senses together. And those that are carrying arms are those that are not really, you know, they are not conscious to me. So I think that it is those that are up there that are supposed to call those that are down to say, come and let's talk, because they are the ones complaining. You are not complaining. They are the ones complaining. They are the ones having the problem. So you're supposed to call them and say, okay, what is your problem? What do you want us to do? That is what I think, Mr. Com. So it is not the bigger power that has to come to, it is not the smaller power that has to come to the bigger power, but the bigger power has to come to the smaller power.
Okay, Fa Evis Tayong, how do we explain that everybody wants a problem to be solved, and yet nobody is willing to shift grounds to some extent?
Yeah, you know, the issue is very disturbing. Disturbing in the sense that we are 4 years, getting to 5 years, and all we get is that the situation is under control. You know, it's very precarious. And I think that where we are finding it difficult to get the common ground has to do with, I think Dr. Nick mentioned some of the points. Akwen also mentioned some of the points. And you see, arrogance is a vice that needs to be conquered at all cost. You know, several times on this platform, I have taken some time to let people understand that when you have your child who is recalcitrant, and probably sometimes you could wrong the child without knowing. We've had instances where you accuse the child of having stolen when the child has not stolen. You get the child well beaten, only to realize that the money you thought the child had taken, the money was lying somewhere in your pocket, in your shirt or your coat, where you had completely forgotten. It takes nothing just for you to come back and make the child say, I'm sorry, you were not on to the money, I found it somewhere, you know. It's sincerity that I think is supposed to be on the platform. And you see, we in conflicts, when conflicts go out of hand, we blame both parties, because when it comes to crimes against humanity and all the like, you know, both parties are always involved. There are not two ways you can avoid that. But you see, I always say that when somebody is at the top, he stands a chance of regulating issues, because you have a regular government that's a member of the National UN Security, United Nations, member of the African Union and all the like. So this body has all it takes to take the bull by the horn if they want it to be. You see, I've been saying, and sometimes maybe the regime in Yaoundé and sometimes the members of the ruling party don't understand that when things are of this nature, the government can come down from the Trojan high horse, right? That just like what Akwen is saying, and then listen to, because if you say they are your children, sometimes it pays nothing for you to say, okay, I'm sorry if I haven't hurt you. All right, what do we do? Can we discuss? Now you understand that we are at a station whereby the situation is escalating and there is breach of trust. Lack of trust between both parties, especially between the one who is considered the trodden. So the minority part thinks that because of the lackadaisical manner put in place by the regime in place, they now have no confidence. I tell you, Yaoundé get one day today, I say national dialogue, which is sincere and genuine. It will take several weeks for people to believe that it is genuine. I mean, when it's genuine? Because some people will doubt, are you sure this thing is real? Because people have been seeing cosmetic solutions and they are not going. That's why it boils down to the issue that there is some aspect of interest, personal interest along the line. I have said several times on platforms that Yaoundé thinks that it should be approached only at the level of politics. All right, I am a political party, I should look at it this way. I am at this way, I should look at it this way. But I think we are getting to the point whereby to find a common ground, we have to surely keep down politics aside and say, CPDM, I'm not CPDM, I am not CRM, I am not this. Of course, you know, within our party, one of the reasons why we did not go in for the twin elections was because we're saying no to the war in the Northwest and the Southwest. And now, when you look at this scenario in general, you realize that nothing is improving. I mean, nothing is improving. And I told Yaoundé sometimes with the CPDM members that the moment we delay is the more these guys become more professional in the bushes. People who could not fabricate bombs now know about bombs. People who could not hold AK-47 now know about it. People who could not manage to hold a long-range missile, before you know it, you might start seeing them holding it. So it becomes too dangerous. Why do I say so, Mr. Liu? The killings is going on. We have the atrocities on the side of the Amber fighters. We talk about rape and all the like. On the side of the security forces, there should certainly be collateral damage. Because when you move in a community where you cannot fully identify an Amber fighter from a civilian, the end result is that you group all of them because you think that they are working in collaboration. Whereas the civilian is caught in between the military and the Ambers, because to him, if he gives an information this way, Amber can come after him. If he gives it the other way, military can come after him. So the end of the civilians end up being the people, the women, the children, the elderly, who pay the highest collateral damage. So what is the situation? Because we know what to do, but we have refused to take to it. I keep saying, Mr. Liu, without fear or favor, and I tell around the regime, day in, day out, that when you talk about conciliation and conflict resolution, one of the major principles is the neutrality of the venue. If you tell me, let's meet in Yaoundé, and some members of the various factions think that they will not be secured in Yaoundé, they will tell you they cannot come. But if you tell, can we meet in South Africa, or you dialogue with them, all right, give me your own area where you think we can come, because Yaoundé is a government that can meet anywhere. So if they tell you South Africa, Ghana, or America, or Guatemala, or wherever, you discuss, it's easier for you to move there and discuss. But we don't have these things. So bad faith is at the center, orchestrated by elites and key members of the regime who think that using force will be the only solution. As I said, Mr. Liu, Cameroon is the only one going to surprise us. Because in Vietnam, America tried force, it did not go. Iraq, they are trying force, it is not going. Libya, they are trying. But I'm surprised that some of the regime members think that when you use force, I saw how they're jubilating the other day for killing, is it General Spiritos and some other members? I said, my problem is not whether they are killed or not. My problem is, have we solved the problem? You will see another sporadic moves coming up, because to kill an ideology is very difficult, Mr. Liu.
Dr. Nick Ngwanya, we are talking about finding common ground. Can we find a common ground without making compromise? Why are people not seemingly understanding that we all need to give up certain positions to get what the people want?
You know, I've been meditating on this thing for a very long time, and I must say that I read a lot. I try to find out what's going on in the human person, and you know, I made some statements that I will repeat now. That we Cameroonians and Africans, we don't understand problems. We don't. It's a broad topic, and then we don't know how to solve problems, let alone knowing how to make wealth. And we would say again that the problems of Africa, you can group them into two. They're either due to ignorance or to irresponsibility, or both. Ignorant because you don't know the principles that operate. Irresponsibility because you know the principles, and for one reason or the other you don't want to use them. You know that something is going to get bad, and you know that if you don't put a stitch in time, it doesn't save 9. And you just do things, you know, based on emotions. And we have said that violence doesn't solve problems. Love and truth solve all problems. And you know that a bushfire, a raging bushfire is started just by one match, and you can put out that fire just when it is starting. But when we know all these principles and we don't put them to use, then we end up with something that we cannot handle. Then we came around with the major national dialogue, and everyone was hoping that it would be the solution to this madness. But again, because we didn't apply principles to it, that's why we are still in a trouble now. And what we are harvesting now is these are the fruits of a failed dialogue, and we are now talking of another dialogue which will come anyway, because whether you like it or not, it's still another principle. We are in a war, and nobody can win this war. Nobody can win this war. It doesn't matter who you can't win this. When you have atomic bombs, you cannot win the war. This war will be won through dialogue, an inclusive dialogue which faces the truth in love, and which seeks to solve problems genuinely, going down to the roots and making sure everybody feels at home in this nation. That's the bottom line. And you see, you would have thought that the problem is with the government, or the problem is with the Amber group, or whoever. But when you look on both sides, you see all sorts of problems which cannot be solved on their own. Solved on their own, not that they are not solvable, but just that the human nature is a very complex being. Let's take, when we were discussing off camera, we were saying, if you look just at the Ambers, for instance, the Amber Camp, for instance, you know, you have the Ayabacho group, you have the Sako group, you have the guy who's in prison, Ayuk Tabe group, and then they don't agree amongst themselves, and they call each other names, and then you have people, the Gariman, I've forgotten his name, Eric Tato, who says things that I don't want to say on here. Then there's another one, Atapang Ivo, who throws in his own stuff, and then you have this other guy in Belgium who, so it's a mixed bag of everything. Now imagine if all these people, all of them on the Amber side, knew exactly what they wanted. Supposing they were speaking in one voice and knew, and were not fighting for because of ego positions and whatever, it would be very clear what should be done. But they don't mind that people are get killed, as long as it is not their own children and their families. You know, some other people die and you think that it's okay. Then when you come to the government, we still have all sorts of things going on. And so I'm of the impression that people don't care. But this is what is going to happen. You know, like those on the Amber side, they have been like, where is the international community? Where is the international community? I want to tell everybody that the international community is very concerned about what is happening. Don't think they are sleeping. Because that international community, you know, there's no nation that is an island. Cameroon does business with all these people in the international community, and nobody wants to be doing business in a rough environment. And therefore, those people, they need peace just as much as West Cameroonians need peace, or East Cameroonians need peace, or Cameroon as a whole needs peace. So everybody is concerned. But when they are quiet, it's because, you know, somebody works from the background and is hoping that there will be a solution. These people work from the background a lot to get that major national dialogue. But unfortunately, we did not use that opportunity properly, and some people keep, you know, saying this or that. And you know, I think we were on social media, I don't know what is our group or another group, where I was challenging somebody to give me 2 things that we do in Cameroon and we show excellence in those areas. That is our problem. I challenge all Cameroonians, I challenge everybody, give me 2 areas, it doesn't matter in which field, it doesn't matter in which department or which ministry, 2 areas in which we show excellence. If you can give me, I'll be very happy. That is our problem. And therefore, you know, to think that we'll be able to solve this problem on our own using the same principles is a little bit tricky. So we have to realize that we cannot do these things on our own. We will open up and work with principles to solve the problem. And this is what is going to happen. A dialogue is going to come. And I'm talking to my brothers in America, in Belgium, everywhere. A dialogue is going to come, and it will be a true, it will be a true and inclusive dialogue. And what is going to happen is, it might take place in the country or out of the country, but this is what is going to happen. Everybody will be expected to come to the table. People will not be excluded from the table. But the thing is, when we come to that table, we are going to leave that table with a solution which will be applicable to everybody. And if you are going to say that you are not going to be part of the solution, it will be a lie. You would have to toe the line, because you cannot just keep doing whatever you want and people are dying. And for some reasons, you know, people who are abroad, they have been feeling very comfortable because you're in America, you're in Belgium, you're in Sweden, you are everywhere, you're in China, you're just doing anything and saying anything. When that dialogue would hold, that would be the end of all those stories. And if you're making PIM, you get into jail.
Okay. Good evening to you, Teme Ben Pawanka. Moi, Valérie, good evening to you. Joël Fongang, Samuel Tita. And to you, Soma Gil, good evening to you. Nyang Yunju. And Ni Abakwa, good evening to you, my brother Ali, watching from the United States out there. And to you, Andreas Kemani, the boss teacher, good evening to you. Akwen, now, we have seen many persons who say we want this problem to be solved, but conditions are given almost on both sides. We want it to be done from our perspective. Is this the best way to wanting to solve a problem?
Well, Mr. Com, to tell
you,
it
must be this must be done, this must be done.
Mr. Com, to be candid with you, one of the major hindrances to the solving of this problem is greed. We have the problem of greed. You know, when this Anglophone crisis started in 2018, teachers and lawyers were complaining, and today we are having different reasons that just came out, and things are going the way they are going. So I think that there is a problem of greed, because, you know, there are both parties. You know, both parties benefit from this, and they do not want this problem to end. As you rightly said, you know, people bring out conditions that if it doesn't work this way, the problem would not be solved. It is the problem of greed, because they have something to benefit. It's like a personal interest. So that is why this problem is still facing a difficulty for it to be resolved. So I think that if we keep out our greedy attitudes, I think that this problem will be solved. Because, you know, we have the Ayabacho, we have Tampa Ivor, we have the other people, the commanditos that are living in the diaspora. Both of them, they are not together. They haven't come to a consensus. They have no common idea. They have not brought out a common goal, so to present to the government to say this is what we want, because of greed. And on the part of the government too, we have greed, because, you know, the government says they are winning the war. We are seeing them killing generals, and they are showing that publicly. Is that what we want? No. We want the problem to be solved, and they can solve the problem, but they do not want, because they have what they are gaining from that. And I tell you, Mr. Kum, there are people in the government that fatly gain from this, and they do not want this problem to end. And they keep like trying to present, you know, window dressings and cosmetic solutions to be able to, you know, cajole Cameroonians. But I tell you, Cameroonians cannot be cajoled, because if how can I say, if a resolution that will favor everybody, a resolution that will, you know, bring out the plight, solve what the Anglophones have been complaining for. It's not tabled out. This issue cannot be solved. Okay. So I think that it is the problem of greed on the both parties that is still hindering the solving of this Anglophone crisis that started since 2016, and we are moving towards the fifth year.
Okay, good evening to you, Maurice Chou, Patem, Godi Ikabe, Don Franco, and to you, El Kamakanjo, good evening to you, and Deep Tabe Ebot, and Honorable Tambe Elrich, and this one says Frustral Diasporanus, Cameroon, okay, and to you, Tabang Enna, good evening to all of you. Now, can we accept that on both sides there are persons who are working so hard for this not to end, because on both sides they are benefiting?
Yes, when a war is on, there are people who benefit, meaning there are people benefit and there are people who are journeying in it. Normally, war is all started most of the times by people who have a journeying ideology. Sometimes it only gets thwarted along the line when other actors come into play, and then they start giving their own sub parts of it. But what I'll be putting in here is that, we talk about, I always have this issue, people on the government bench always defending that there are many factions in the whole thing. Who do we talk to? I have been saying that I always call it a flimsy excuse, because when you look at the issue of South Sudan, you realize that before, when they left Sudan and came down to South Sudan, it was not only one faction. I've been telling people of that. The first meeting that took place in DRC, we had 7 factions that were present. It's just that we had the main one, but you had other minor ones. So when we look at it generally, my point of view is that when we have factions, first, the error we have is that as we delay, other factions keep developing day in, day out, for one reason or the other. Some could develop for selfish reasons. Some could be formed up, could be put up maybe to correct the other ideologies of some they think were not in line with it. But now, the main point of view we find here is that people benefit, it is true. I would tell you, for example, that maybe you could get maybe an armed general, probably who could be a bike rider, and today he could be controlling millions. It is a reality. You could get a Dio who could rely with his small running credit that could be about 500,000 francs per year, and today he has more than 7 military bodyguards around him, even more than a minister in Yaoundé, because ministers have but a bodyguard, just a single bodyguard. But if you go to the northwest, southwest, in all the subdivisions, especially in the hot areas, the GOs themselves move with even 10 bodyguards, which means they are even more compared to what we call the president or the prime minister. So if you look at it critically, the benefits are there. Mr. Lo, you realize that when this crisis started somewhere along the line, during the second year, we had a presidential decree that was signed, and all the governors and the GOs had additional brand new cars dished out to them. I think you're a media man, you know about that story, to all the DOs and the governors and the SGOs in these areas. That's additional budget we're talking about. You understand the allowances have gone up, their risk allowances have increased, and the captains, the lieutenants, the colonels, and all the like, they too have increased risk allowance, and so to say. I tell you, without fear or favor, that on both sides, the interest is there, the advantages are there. You see a caporal chef, imagine an army who could only be in the barracks. Now today he could stand on the road and ask ID card. They could go for what you call kale, and they could get a bike and squeeze, like you hear of recent that bike riders in Bamenda were thinking of going on strike about concerning harassment from the security officers. But the officers are doing their job. They too say they are harassing them by taking 25,000 francs and all the like. So it's a whole win-win game that to stop it now, I have the impression, because I've been saying that while the Ambas have their own part of the story, which is sad, I tell you that if you look at it, I have been following stories, I'm always on the ground.
Yeah, but my question to you, I don't want to stray away from. My question is, are there persons that are within the government ranks and within the separatist rank
obviously
who claim to be working for either the interests of the government or the separatist, but are working for their personal interest? That is, they have no interest whatsoever in singing into it that this conflict is tough.
Obviously, Mr. Leo, that's what I was saying here. I have a scenario in Bamenda, I don't want to go detailing, where people are dispersed somewhere, they arrive there and spray bullets in the air. There's no cause for alarm. They have to spray for several hours to justify an action carried out of the ground, and nobody's injured. I'm not saying they killed anybody. Just spray in the air, create the panic, and come back to the barracks. They are watching me at the various bars. They understand what I'm talking about. So it's an issue of interest. I must be honest with you, Mr. Leo, that on both sides, that interest issue is there. That's why if you look at it critically, it will be difficult for some of the board of members to tell you that let us call a spade a spade. Because when you call a spade, like we're talking here on the media, the next thing is you are either Amber or you are for the CPDM or you are for this and that. So it becomes very complex. But I think that, Mr. Liu, no matter the interest they have, I have said over and over that we need to have what we call an active government that can take surprise and routine visits on the field. If Yaoundé regime, for example, decides that President Biya today will take a surprise visit to Mundemba, the things he will see will be different from the report that leave maybe Akwaya or maybe leave Manu to move over to him. He'll be surprised. Because each time an action is taking place, now, if people are killed, interest is there. I must be able to tell you that. Because it's normal in any war that people fight for personal interest. When it gets to a particular level, the raison d'etre of that fight gets to be lost along the line.
Maybe thwarted, yeah.
It's thwarted, but you still have some few who think that they have a point. So if I look at it, Mr. Leo, where do we have a common ground? If Yaoundé regime sits today and say, all right, il faut venir avec tout sujet, bring your secessionist idea. Yes, you want separation, come. You want federation, come. You want confederation, come. You want centralization, come. That would be the beginning of the solution. Because when you start saying this excluding this, Amber says there's nothing I'm discussing apart from separation. The government says there's nothing I'm discussing, I can discuss everything excluding separation. You see where the bone of contention comes in. But I keep on saying that the government has an upper hand, Mr. Leo. If Yaoundé regime today says, all right, enough is enough. Can we meet in Nigeria? Can we meet in Soweto? Please bring all your topics on board. There's no taboo subject. That would be the beginning of the solution. But if not, I've been telling them that, like what Dr. Nick is saying, that like for those in the diaspora, you know, when the time comes for negotiation, you know, people will have to account for. Okay. But I keep on saying, Mr. Leo, that whether the regime and any party likes it, there will be a special criminal tribunal. If you are a GO, you are a governor, or you are a minister caught in between, you will go in for, just as members of the separatist fighters if they are found guilty of crimes against humanity. It's a sure fact. I am not doubting with that. If a man is colonel today, a time will come when you will no more be colonel. Lawyers will be asking you, you'll be answering questions and shining your eyes. It's a fact. Okay, good evening to you, Ambali Squats, and to you, Godi. Kabe, good evening to you, Munzibeta, my brother, Smooth. So, good evening to all of you guys watching us through social media out there. Dr. Nick Ngwanyam, I wanted to take a message from Ima Nkong, one of our colleagues who is Mboya. I want to go through her remarks so that you can react to them. Yeah. Iman Kong, writing from Boya, says, greetings to you and the panel. It's a timely and relevant topic. We are at a state of collapse, which is very critical in conflict development. We need a demonstration of good faith from both sides, and that has a lot to do with ceasefire and an end of violence. Far is right about the importance of neutrality in deciding dialogue venues and approaches. Genuine and inclusive dialogue means there should be no taboo subjects, and the goal should be finding a sustainable solution to the crisis. One party's solutions should not be imposed on the other. Parties must be ready to forgive and acknowledge responsibility for atrocities committed thus far, and make sacrifices or compromises that will help restore reconciliation and peace. Aspects of justice will follow, of course. Good evening to you, Ima. Want you to react to it when she says that there's a collapse, in the situation in the state, which is very critical in the conflict development, that we need a demonstration of good faith from both sides, and that has a lot to do with ceasefire and end of violence. How do we demonstrate this good faith?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think Emma is right in everything that she said. Let me just make a summary statement. And you've seen me, I've written it on social media, and I think we've discussed it before, to say that, watch me, that the President, His Excellency President Paul Biya, at this material moment, wants reconciliation and unity in the nation. That reconciliation and unity in the nation is like it's like a topic of an essay, and you can go down into the body of the essay and break it up now into ceasefire, this Truth and Reconciliation Commission, whatever it takes to get the peace and to get the unity, to get the reconciliation, whatever it takes. And therefore, I think you've been the one saying it too on social media. It's not going to be this Cartier thing of, oh, this is how you shoot a bird, that's how you catch a rat, and so on. It would be the people who have the skills in conflict resolution that will come to the forefront. It will not be something that will be left to ministers to throw their weight around and so on. Yes, ministers could be there, but you could be a minister, but you're not the technician. You could be the mouthpiece, but you always have the technician by you saying, what do we do under these circumstances? And the minister is bound to listen to the expert, and it will not be just doing things a la Cameroonese. We have to do things following principles the way it's done the world over. The way it was done in Rwanda, the way it was done in South Africa, the way it was done in Sudan, and the way it's been done anywhere else, the way it's done in South America. We are not going to invent anything in Cameroon, and we are going to follow those processes and those best practices that have worked and get this thing done with once and for all. And when you are coming to that table, you must have good faith. You must know what truth means. You must be imbibed with love. If you're not truthful, if you don't love, if you don't care about the suffering, you will have no place there. So that's the bottom line. We've had 4 or 5 years to be playing with the lives of human beings. We've had 4 or 5 years to be running the country to the ground. I think in business we say you have to stop loss. There comes to a point when everybody says enough is enough, and that point is just around the corner.
Good evening, Mr. Liu. Love your program. It's Desmond writing from Bamenda. Good evening, Desmond. Mr. Kum, the panelists, good evening. Let the government make a truthful level field. The talks will take place with positive results. Pavik is writing from Mancon. Greetings, Mr. Liu, and to all in the studio. 2 things are responsible for the reluctance: pride from the government who doesn't want to look weak, and interest from the boys in the bushes, because most of those guys were jobless and are rendering labor in farms to earn a living. But today, with guns in their hands, they can kidnap and ask for ransoms. So you don't expect these guys to easily abandon this new source of living for normalcy. El Haj Mohammed is writing from Yaoundé. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I agree with Ba Akwen. Both parties don't want the war to end because of their personal interests at the detriment of the innocent civilians. Mr. Teda, the Akwayaman, writing from Limbe. Good evening to you, Akwayaman. Good evening, Mr. Kuman, all the panelists. Truly enough, the people in both camps who are making fabulous gains in this struggle. So founding a common ground to the killings is doubtful. Simon Gwa is writing from Yaoundé. Good evening, Mr. Kuma. Greets the team on board. Dr. Nick said something that sounds like a prophecy. Please, God, let the dialogue happen tomorrow. We need it. Emmanuel writing from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and to the brothers and sisters in the studio. Our country needs help. Please let the leaders on both sides be mindful of the fact that whatever they are doing, each will one day give an account of what they have done. What kind of country are we building? Country where every minister commands the military. Is that governance? Okay. Deco is writing from Limbe. Now, why has all the pressure from the international community fell on the ears on seemingly on both sides? Because we've seen Atibonagi who said expressly that they will no longer tolerate violence, and consistently calls have been made on both sides. Almost all the communiques, the resolutions, both sides are called upon to respect the rights of human beings. They should cease from human rights violations, but nothing is happening.
The regime in place, it's a regime that gives value to inanimate objects. Human lives do not matter to them. As you rightly said, we had Tibonagi who made a call. We had to France recently that said BIA has to come for an inclusive dialogue, has to end these problems. But yet we haven't gotten any resolution or anything that is being done. So I think that is the fact that the regime in place gives value to inanimate objects, things that bring them money, things that benefit them. They do not care about the Anglophone problem. problem. They do not care about the plight of the Anglophones, because Mr. Leo, it is not international bodies that are supposed to put pressure on the Cameroon government to solve these problems, because Anglophones are part of Cameroon, and we are a resource to this country. You know, the Southwest and Northwest brings a lot of resources, a lot of money into the income of this country, but yet we are abandoned. We are looked upon like we are nothing. Why? Because the regime in place doesn't care. The regime in place gives value to inanimate objects. We had what is happening with the CDC. CDC is dying, and the government says nothing about it. Or do we need another international body to come and tell them, you guys need to put some money to be able to revive the CDC? No. These are the things that the government are supposed to put interest. So I think that the fact that they do not give value is because they do not heed to the call of international bodies, is because they do not see any importance in solving these problems. Instead, they think that as the war continues to go in, they keep benefiting from what they are benefiting. They keep having their money, and, you know, there are some commanditors in the government too that, you know, that are benefiting. Like, you know, you'll be sent down for an envoyé, you'll be sent down to Bamenda, and you have a huge budget. You are being housed, you are being fed, and you are having an increase in your budget and salary. All these things boils down to the fact that there are people there that are not ready to solve the problem. And I heard Dr. Nick saying that Biya wants reconciliation and peace. It is true he wants that, but I doubt if really the regime in place wants that. Biya might want it, but those around him do not want it. So I think that we need a rebirth. We need something new in Cameroon, because the regime in place cannot give us the peace we desire, because they are already corrupt. They are in the money. They are feeling the money, and I don't think that they want to leave out their money to be able to give the Anglophones the peace, the desire, because the terms or the problems which were brought out are not ready to be solved, because these problems are what they really benefit from. So I don't think that this peace or this inclusive dialogue is something we are wishing, or something we think will happen as soon as possible. It's story to me. It's something that will not happen in this regime. So I think that the regime needs to change. We need to change everything. We need a rebirth. We need something new. We need a new party to take over this country for the Anglophones' problems to be solved, and for the international bodies to be answered properly.
Okay. So do you think the international community is helpless at pressuring both sides? You just talked about the pressure on the government. You did not mention the fact that the separatists themselves, they have come under pressure from the government and also not budging, eh?
Yeah, Mr. Leo, while looking at the role the international community is playing, let me just come in with an interjection here. Where I like from Dr. Nick, who talked about President Biya wants peace. No. Let's be very straight here. When you are achieving command and things are going wrong, it means you are part of the problem. Mr. Leo is the director of Media Prime. If your staff are not doing well, it means you are not doing well. They are doing well because you are very cautious and you have a mechanism to put in checks and balances of the people you put at the various departments. If somebody ever comes on air and says President Biya wants peace, that one does not go. Why do I say so? A leader takes responsibility. We don't come on air and cover a leader and then start bringing blames to other. No, it doesn't go. My sister Akwen says, no, President Biya might want the peace, but it's people around him. No. All of them don't want the peace. I said the entire crew in Yaoundé, they don't want that peace. If President Biya gets up one day today and say, throws the throw, genuine dialogue is convinced, the decree signed, bam, holding here and here, it will hold. So, if the leader makes an error, let's not be ashamed to say the leader has made an error, point blank. If his chindas are fumbling, it is because the leader is watching the chindas fumbling and he is surely in accordance with it. If not, would have had some disciplinary measures put in place by the government. You cannot be in a government you act otherwise, Mr. Leo. There's no way out. You will be disciplined. So if you are acting and the government is watching you it means it is the government's agenda to enable the chindas work the way the government wants. That one is true. We don't rigmarole in those kind of cases. Now, coming back to the issue of international community watching. Mr. Leo, while they are watching, we have what we call international relations and politics red zone or red line. That's what they use in assessing conflicts in the world. We have what we call red line. Now, why do we say they have an assessment of red line? They put it in place comparative-wise to other conflicts. We have Myanmar there, you know, we have Somali with the Al-Shabaab militiamen, the Janjaweed militiamen and all the like. And so if you look at it, it is true our problem is hurting us. But if you look at the rate at which it's moving compared to the international rating, they still think that our own has not arrived at the red zone. But it does not mean that they are not taking note. They are taking, as I said earlier, Mr. Leo, when this war will be brought to an end by circumstances, you will be surprised at the unveiling evidences on crimes against humanity that will be brought forth even to you, that some of us will not even know, by the same international community. So what they do is that they are simply gathering facts as for now, and they have what we call underground diplomacy, whereby as they talk, they also go behind and caution. But the irony we think is that most of the regime barons who are arrogant think that Cameroon is an island. And so, you cannot make it in our internal politics and all the like. So long as you have a treaty to the International Convention of Human Rights and other treaties attaching to the African Union and the United Nations, there is no way you will sit and think that you can do things business as usual. All the notes are being taken. As I'm saying, we are drawing closer to the end of it. Once we get to that part, you will now realize that the international community was on it, but they had to exhaust what they call all diplomatic avenues. When the U.S. Congress comes in, the French MPs come in, and others, those are part of the diplomatic measures. We are still at the level of it now. International community watching. The other phase will soon come in when it has to do with embargoes, which means they pinpoint government officials and start giving them embargoes and cutting bilateral economic ties. It will then get to that level when we get into phase 3, which will be the most severe phase in the international relation part of it. That has to do now with what we call full-fledged intervention in the conflict zones. Once we get to that point, know that there will be no turning back. I think Yaoundé regime still has a lot of time and rope to draw. But I have the impression that with the ERIC they have in place, those who have gone through it, they are still joking with international relations and international diplomacy. But I think that nemesis will surely catch up with them any moment from now. Then we shall be at the dock at the various courts discussing grammar by then. God willing, if we are still alive.
Okay. He says, you say the President Biya wants this, but he does not think so. I'm sure Ba'a can also do not believe your story, Dr. Nick Ngwenyo.
Well, you know, like I said, I have my crystal ball. This is not a ball, though. The way I look in it, I will see it. I'm only telling you what I'm seeing in my crystal ball. I didn't say that anybody asked me to come and say so. When I look in the crystal ball, I see it. So I'm only telling you. That's why I got it, so I can look into it and tell you what I'm seeing. So if you say what I'm seeing is not right, well, who am I to refuse? But I'm telling you what I'm saying. So the question again is, what is happening between the government, the AMBA, and the international community? Listen, you got your problem. You are a family. You are a family head, and you have a problem with your kids. Your neighbors would talk to the father and gently and say, "Hey, look, this is how things happen. Do this, do that, and so on." And they will not just knock your door down and start hitting you on the head. But if they see that you're going to kill your wife, of course they would hit on your door, and then something else would happen. And the unfortunate thing is this. Both sides are not working on principles. That's what went wrong. Because when the international community, when Thibault Nagy or anybody says, this is the way forward, if we were actually interested in solving the problems, then they would see that this party or that party or both parties are trying to solve the problem. And if there's a difficulty, they would quickly identify that difficulty and help. But the impression we get is that both parties are not interested in a solution. That's the problem. When both parties are not interested in a solution, then the international community will wait and hope that people will come to their senses. But the sad thing is, while they are waiting, people are dying, people are suffering. And also, the so-called Anglophone groups, you present a problem to the world, and then the world is looking at it, trying to see how to understand it. Then even amongst you, you start your own fights within you. That's what has messed up the whole thing. It has messed up the whole thing. So now, those Americans, they want to talk. they don't know what to say, because even you yourself, you don't know what you want. That is the bottom line. You don't know what you want. You fight each other. And I understand that on the field, this group goes and kills the other group and so on. They're arguing over girlfriends and money and so on. So it's stupid. You have a good case and you spoil it. That's it. So when you spoil it, then those people who would have been on your side, they will sit and fold their arms and say, oh, something is seriously wrong here. But they keep an eye on you. And they see the way you are traumatizing your own people that you said you were protecting. And when they start coming after you, oh Jesus, you will hate yourself for being in that country. Now let me put it this way. Many of you are in America. You think because it's a free world, you can do anything and say anything and you call it democracy. Forget it. Put it this way. You are just like a lion in a cage. When those people in the international community will say enough is enough, and I'm telling you that time is coming. It is this dialogue that is coming. That dialogue will be the red line that will be drawn. Enough is enough. You toe the line or they nail you. You're not going to be saying, oh, I did this because of that. No. Like Fire Elvis was saying, they have all the evidence against you. And then if you say that, you have left Cameroon and now you have American nationality, so you can do anything because you're an American and the American law would protect you. Fair and good. If you're an American, be doing American stuff and leave Cameroonian stuff alone. Am I correct? Right? Be doing your American things, vote for Donald Trump, do the other things, and then leave Cameroon alone. If you don't leave Cameroon alone, then when the time comes, they will put a rope around your neck. And if you were wise, this ego thing that is bugging all of you, let it go. To be kidnapping other people, killing people for the sake of money, inanimate things, is not the way to go. And if you think that the international community is weak, you are a liar.
Okay, Mr. Liu, as a young man growing up, I have never seen two people fighting and come to a common ground without one defeating the other or a passerby coming between them. Prof. Bill, that's Chefo, writing from Bomenda. Chefo, good evening. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Mr. Elvis is an active critic with truthful facts. Let the authorities listen to something. Muna Paul is writing from Fringiang village. Fringiang village, I don't know. Okay, Simbengu, okay. This one says, good evening, Mr. Liu. God Gidowski from Bamenda. You see, Mr. Liu, one thing is certain. People talk of dialogue, of which I know is right, but the truth is, if they do not have, not experience what is on ground, then even the decision to be taken at the so-called dialogue will never be the best. So only the so-called leaders go to these areas of conflicts and experience what is happening. Only when would they know why the war is going on. I believe if Paul Biya's child got shot due to the conflict, okay, we will send militaries to destroy the people. Okay.
Can I just make a little comment on the person who spoke there? He said that growing up he has seen that conflict never ends until someone defeats the other or somebody comes in between. I'd like to say something. We have to understand what that conflict is. We have to say that when you're talking about war, you have to divide that war into two phases. There's the internal war, which we call anger, and when you don't deal with it, then you express it and it becomes violence against other people. So when you fight a war with another person and you win because you think you have guns and you shoot and kill, you think you have won the war. No, you didn't win a war. You are deceiving yourself. You win the war. You don't win the war. You win by the peace. And to win the peace means go beyond, go past that violence, drop everything, go past that violence and go deep into that person and reconcile with the person. That is forgiveness and so on and so forth. That is when you say you have won the war or won the peace. Winning the war is if you cannot win the war by just shooting people and they're quiet and you think you have won the war. No. It's about winning the peace. And winning the peace, you never win the peace with guns. And I've said it before, it's not because the government is strong and has an army and so on. Watch me. You can go out there and kill all Anglophones, those that are living and those that are not yet born. I said kill all. You still will not have solved the Anglophone problem. Your desire is to solve the Anglophone problem. Your desire is to cause reconciliation and unity in the nation. And therefore, the gun has no place. Violence has no place. And we're going to use the techniques that get to the people's heart. Blowing up people's heads and knees and so on and rejoicing over them is not the thing. Thank you.
Okay. By Nadia, we are talking about finding common grounds, but we have seen civil society going the more and more silent. Have we seen them push both sides to find common grounds as like we are doing now? Have we seen the civil society actually active on the government to shift positions beyond where they are now? Have you seen the civil society also very active on the separatists themselves to shift positions so for the sake of the people?
Well, Mr. Com, to tell you the truth, the civil society in Cameroon is taking sides.
Okay.
Because when you look at the way they react within the problem that is happening, they take sides with the separatist fighters. Meanwhile, it was not supposed to be that way. For a solution to come, you're supposed to measure the balance. You're supposed to, you're supposed to be truthful. You're not supposed to be biased. So that's the problem. And that is why, the government does not give them a listening ear. We have so many activists in Cameroon. We have so many of them that are acting, they are talking. And when you listen to whatever they say, they are like, they call it la récupération in French. They are using the Anglophone problems to be able to get prominence or to get visibility. And to me, that's not being active. It's trying to create yourself an image. So I think that the civil society in Cameroon has failed, because if they were genuinely involved or interested in the Anglophone problem, they wouldn't have been acting the way they're acting. Because for you to bring a solution in something, like my co-panelist said, when you see two people fighting, you need to get to the root of the problem. You must not just come there and say you're wrong or you're right. You're supposed to study the problem, get the plight, and try to look for a solution that will favor both parties. But the civil society in Cameroon does not work that way. They are using the Anglophone problems to get prominent. They are using the Anglophone problems to get visibility. That's why I tell you, the problem or the major hindrance to these Anglophone problems not having a solution is greed. Because on both sides, all the sides, the civil society, the government, and the separatist fighters, they are all greedy. Yes, everybody wants to have a name. Everybody wants money. Everybody wants to be prominent. Some, some of the commanditors of this wants to be, they have the ambitions to be president tomorrow. I want to be the president of the Ambazonia and all that. It boils down to greediness. So I think that the civil society in Cameroon has failed. They have failed the cause of this problem, because if they were really genuinely involved or genuinely interested, they would have acted on not being biased. You understand? They wouldn't have been biased, like taking sides. And we have two political parties too, Mr. Com. Political parties in Cameroon have failed the Anglophone problems. Most of them are silent. Most of the Anglophone, the political parties in Cameroon, they are silent. We have most of the parties that are found in the Francophone zones. They are not interested in this. So I think that everybody has failed the Anglophone problems. Everybody, the civil society, the government, and even the separatist fighters and the political parties. Because, Mr. Com, this is a political problem. To tell the truth, because in the beginning the Anglophone problem was like, we are being marginalized, we are this, but today it's no longer the same. It has changed. Things are going the way they are going. People are interested. We had some people that were caught in Bamenda who left Bagante, went to Bamenda and kidnapped people and were asking for ransom. Everybody has gotten interested in this problem because of greediness. They want to gain, they want this and that, and they have failed. And the political parties in Cameroon are not interested, because once you start talking about the Anglophone problems, you become a separatist fighters, or you attempt a taboo, or perhaps your interest that maybe the government would have nominated you or given you a post will no longer be the same, so they remain silent. So I think that is greed and all that. The activists have failed. They have used these Anglophone problems as a method of having visibility, a method of being alive in the political scene. So I think, Mr. Com, everybody has felt the Anglophone problems, and I think we need an inclusive dialogue. We need reconciliation. We need love, and we need tolerance to be able to solve this problem.
Okay, love and tolerance. Now, when we engage in a fight, one thing that we should consider before moving forward should be our capacity to win a war. I'm talking about the winnability of a war. The parties who are fighting today, have they taken stock of their capacity to win a war? Is this war winnable?
Well, maybe before I talk about the issues of the war, whether it's winnable or not, maybe to interject with what Akwen said, that everybody has failed, all political parties. Well, her party might have failed, but CRM has not failed. Because we refused going in for twin elections. People have blamed us. Why that sudden backup? I think that nobody is here who does not like enjoy political positions. I think I don't want to be debating on that. I think we backed out of that because on our agenda was no to the war in the Northwest Southwest. We've even seen how we have been taxed to be supporters of AMBA, that's the CRM. And I begin to ask people who have little brains, what will you think that somebody wants to rule a country and sometimes supporting somebody who wants to tear the country apart, you know? Sometimes it just comes like that, but it's all in all, it's political jargon. And I don't want to think that the problem is just political per se. It has to do with historicity. And she said, not just politics in it. If you were in my own point of view, I would have even said we keep politics aside and face it as Cameroonians who are looking at it at the humanitarian point of view, you know, if you were in my own point of view. And then, you know, before coming to just what you just asked, you know, how winnable is the war? You know, I'm just coming from Batibo. I've been to Kukum, Guzang. I was there just 48 hours ago. And also I saw, you know, if you don't go to the field, you'll not understand what I'm talking about. When you get into, I was in Bali. I saw how the area is deserted. I went to Batibo town, Guzang itself, and also to Kukum. I went down to PHS. I don't know, even people were surprised to see me moving around because normally it's a scared atmosphere. I will most admit to you. So people who have not gone there will not know why we are advocating that this thing needs to end, even though the powers that be too are not helping the situation. Now, if you look at it, we're talking about, like what Dr. Nick is saying, which is quite correct. People have to be accountable and all the like. But you know, there's some aspect which people seem not to understand too. As I said, the conflict in Cameroon has its peculiarities different from other conflicts. Now, if you look at what transpired in DRC, you know, with Laurent Kunda and the various rebel leaders, you know, when they escaped, they did not escape with nationalities, with new nationalities. Now, there is the Treaty of Extradition, what they call extradition. The Treaty of Extradition for somebody who is not a national in another country is different from somebody who's a national in that country. There are two different procedures. I'm sure lawyers watching me and those who have done international relation and politics will understand what I'm talking about. Now, for somebody who is not or who has obtained nationality in another country, the first thing is if you are carrying out an extradition treaty, you will first be finding out whether the country and that country where he's residing has extradition treaty accords or not. If you do not have it, it becomes a little bit complex. You need to either get another backed up tribunal that's backed up by UN, where that country where the person is residing is a member before it can start going. And it's a whole procedure, you know. So, like I saw sometime on social media and sometimes on air, some members of the ruling party were saying, why are those countries keeping those people? It's that I'm saying Cameroon is complex. In Somalian case and other like, they could just bond the guys because they went there without nationality, and so they could be bonded. So it's a little bit tricky. It's a whole school of thought on its own that I want to bring here for time constraint on about the treaties of extradition concerning those who are nationals in countries or not. Now, in the issue of whether the war is winnable, the thing is clear. When we talk about guerrilla warfare, I think Tibonage just hit the nail. Mr. Leo, look at Al-Shabaab militiamen in Somalia. Kenyan troops are also there backing, but the thing is still there. Now, look at Boko Haram in the far north. A whole Sahel region forces put together, I mean, multinational joint task force put together, cannot defeat Boko Haram. Why? Because of their guerrilla warfare tactic. So you realize that wherever you have guerrilla warfare being introduced, at the beginning, the sovereign state thinks that it's possible for them to conquer. But as time goes on, the fact that they move in between the civilians makes it more complex. That's why I said in an ideological war, a reasonable government goes in to fight using ideology, like what Dr. Dick is saying. You use peace weapon, for example. So if you call the people down, this thing is us, don't worry, we can sort it out. When you use that method, before you know it, look at, as I said earlier in this case of Cameroon, if you kill General Spiritus, if you kill Fima Shan or the like, he has children, he has followers. It does not end there. Look at what happens in Iraq. By the time that we're talking about Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan, people thought the war was over. But you still have insecurity in Afghanistan. So an ideological war to kill, you don't go with military might. I think Tubonaki was quite right because they tested in Colombia.
Yeah, but winnability is both ways.
Yeah, so winnability, I said exactly here, is that for the case of Cameroon, winnability is far-fetched until we get to the negotiation table. Let nobody, anybody, whether in Yaoundé, who says we have won the war, is a lie. Till thy kingdom come. The simple thing is that if you keep that military might aside, you parade bodies of fighters killed, it's okay. I'm not saying don't kill. You parade bodies like that every day and day out. You burn houses. I said sometime here, Mr. Leo, that when I say we have a kangaroo regime, it's a kangaroo regime of the first order. When you kill, for example, we had situations in Douala where people ran to Douala and we heard that their mothers, their beloveds had been burnt in houses or killed. They left their carpentry duties here and mechanics, not going to fight for independence, but going now for the sake of revenge. If you go into it now, it's not winnable. The war is not winnable. It's not a winnable war because most of those who are into it now, Mr. Leo, are not even in the aspect of independence. The question is, my mother was killed, my father was gunned down, my brother was shot, so I'm going to revenge. You discover that it becomes more complex. So at the end of it, the regime will not win, the Amber fighters will not win, if care is not taken, Mr. Leo, if a third party does not come in, because anybody who tells lies that Yaoundé can solve this problem, it can never happen. A third party, joining party, if it does not come in, this war will take the next 50 years, as we found in the case of Colombia. Very certain. So at the end of it, to cut the story short, Mr. Leo, since as we cannot win the war, I'm talking about statistics, because the killing will just be going on. As time goes on, from the AKs, you start hearing the Ambers having maybe long-range missiles, grenade and all the like. At the end of it, we'll still have lives being lost every day. I see how it disturbs you, it disturbs me, it disturbs Dr. Nick, and Akon, and any other normal human being who is of a moral standing. So at the end of it, to keep the issue of I have won this war, you have won this war, the only solution is we are sorry for killing each other. We are sorry for not doing this. Please, can we now talk as brothers and sisters? Once this is done, under the banner of sincerity, now with the presence of a third party, why do I say third party, Mr. Leo? Because breach of trust has been established already. Now, nobody can trust anyone again. So, let Yaoundé regime call these guys in the bushes. They know them. They talk with them. And the dialogue, the guys will tell them, we want maybe Thabo Mbeki from South Africa. We want this person from this place to be our mediator. Once they agree, a neutral ground is accepted, ceasefire is endorsed. Before you know it, Mr. Leo, we'll start talking a different scenario here. If not, we're blowing grammar from morning to night here with nothing changing.
Dr. Nick, if we can't win a war, why do we keep exposing our own people to misery?
We've said it time and again that the issue with this war is ego, that the war economy has set in on both sides, and there's greed. These are the three things. You have ego, the desire for power, then the war economy has set in. And you know, to understand the war economy very well, I think I said it before, this term that I learned with the Anglophone problem called the docks of war phenomenon. The docks of war, you would understand the docks of war in the sense that you have a warlord who starts who brings together a bunch of guys and gives them guns, and the boys are listening to him because he sponsors the first things or whatever. But before long, the boys who are carrying the guns, they begin to realize that they are the masters as long as they have the guns, and that chain of command is broken, and then they begin to act on their own accord and do whatever they wish without actually following that chain of command. When you get to that point, things become very complicated, because probably the person who started the war had this political ideology in mind. This is what I want. But those other guys, when they have guns, they change, they forget about the political ideology, and they are driven by economic gains, and so the whole thing changes and no one is in control, and it becomes very chaotic. That's where we are now, and we have to act very quickly and get this dialogue done, because in as much as this thing has set in, when we get the right dialogue and then the principles are laid out and everybody comes to the table, and then, you know, a new path is defined, any other person who is not part of it, who doesn't abide and who doesn't follow the rules and so on, is out of the game. And when you are out of the game, your numbers will be small and you can easily be squashed.
Okay, you can easily be squashed. Now, we are talking about winnability. How supportive is the population? Because almost everybody is fighting for the people now. What is the people in the positions of those fighting? Are they receiving the blessings of the people, or they are way apart, away from the people? And should the people not constitute that force that should bring both sides to a common ground?
Well, Mr. Com, before I answer your question, I wanted to tell Mr. Fcfa that, you know, we are talking about the Anglophone problems, and if we need solutions, you need to accept your fault. That is what we call forgiveness. Because right now, he said the CPN, the MRC, they have played their part. They haven't disappointed the Anglophones because they didn't go for the twin elections. But you guys went for the presidential elections. Meanwhile, there were the Anglophone crisis. Why didn't you boycott to that election? You have failed because you're giving the reasons that you.
Leaking groundnut and making. It's a point of saying we have not failed. Just go on with
I am the one talking, Mr.
You spoke about her and she listened now.
Mr. Fai, we call that democracy. You cry every day that there is no democracy in Cameroon. The party on power does not give you ability to talk. Meanwhile, you're doing the same on the TV station. Like I was saying previously, the MRC went for the presidential elections. Meanwhile, there were the Anglophone crisis ongoing, and they came with a flimsy excuse saying that they are not going for the swing election because of the Anglophone crisis, and that is why you haven't failed. You have failed, Mr. MRC, to tell you the truth. So you're supposed to accept it, because when you start shifting the blames, it means you are not trying to look for solutions to end the Anglophone crisis, because that is the problem we are having right now. The separatist fighters are saying we're not going to compromise. The government says we are not going to compromise, and that's the same thing you're doing. So you need to have you need to grow beyond that for you to get a good solution. Mr. Leo, to answer your question says that what is the population given the what is the position of the population?
Yes. Do those that are fighting for the population, do they have the blessings of the population? Should the population or rather serve as a pull factor on both sides for a common ground?
Yes, Mr. Com, to tell you the truth, the population have given up on the both parties, because you know the separatist fighters said they are fighting to liberate the population of the Anglophones, that they have been marginalized and all that, but still they refuse them education, they refuse them peace, they are killing them, burning their houses and all that. And I think that the Anglophones have grown past that little cajole that they were saying. So today I think that the population is no longer with the separatist fighters, because today they are the ones that want peace, and if they want peace, they have to start denouncing these children, because most of these boys that are carrying arms are children from, they have their mothers, they have their families, and most of these people are the population, they know them. So I think that for them to be able to participate to quench the Anglophone problem, they are supposed to start denouncing them, because actually, to tell you the truth, these guys are no longer fighting for them, because you cannot be killing me and telling me you're fighting for me. You cannot be refusing me education, because tomorrow I won't know why you're fighting, because if you're telling me you're liberating me, I am an illiterate and I will not understand why you're fighting. So you need to allow me to have education, you need to allow me to go to school, you need to permit me to do my business, you need to permit me to live under good condition, because whatever you're preaching, you're saying, okay, when I'll liberate you from the Francophones or from La République, this is what you will have. But now I am not having that. What is the proof to show that tomorrow, if I accept what you're saying, am I going to live like in the bed of roses? No. So I think that the population is no longer with them. They are no longer supportive, because they have gotten to the peak. They are tired. We have mothers here in Bonaberry who are doing prostitution just because of a plate of food, because these guys forced them to leave their zones because of the rampant killings from the government and the separatist fighters. So I think that they have gotten to the peak. They are tired. They are no longer interested. So they want this Anglophone crisis to end so that they can go back. They want their lives to come back to normalcy. They want everything to be stable. So I think that that's a position of the population, because when I talk with these women who are living here, they tell you, my sister, I want to go back. I am tired. But how can you keep staying quiet if you know that your child is carrying an arm? You can still call them out of the bushes. Because at one point, Mr. Liu, it is these mothers that ask their children, the boys, the male, go to the bushes to seek for refuge. And today they turn to something else. So I think that they can play to their own role, the population, to tell them, abandon those guns, come out, whatever you want, we can dialogue. Carrying arms is not the solution. Killing me is not the solution. Burning down is not the solution. Because I tell you, Mr. Liu, there are some families that are being killed by their own brothers. You will see a father who is being kidnapped by his son. So today I think that the population has gotten, they are tired and they want everything to come back to normalcy, and they are no longer supportive of whatever is happening. They are not supporting either the government, neither the separatist fighters. They are neutral to me. Okay.
The neutral, do you think so too? That the population should be the focus, or that key factor for compromise? That is for their sake, let me give up this on this side and this for the sake of the population.
Yeah, I think it becomes a little bit tricky and a little bit complex there, based on the position where the population is standing. I must be honest with you. But you know, with issues of this nature, we must be able to pick up, like, as I interject as usual, that when we have satellite government parties, you know, they have their own way of functioning. Because when you look at elections are divided into two. You have what they call general elections and universal suffrage election. Now, for general elections, you could move there because you could carve areas, Grand North, this area, and you win comfortably. But universal suffrage, you can never do that because it has to do with the people's representative on the ground. Those are two different categories of elections, which is done in political sense. I'm sure probably the academy is sleeping. Maybe they'll find time to talk about how you could win elections, presidential, different from what they call municipal and parliamentary, which is more of universal suffrage, direct people on the ground and the representatives. So let me keep that aside because a whole school of thought on its own. Probably the academy will get to meet us. We could find time and assist them to beef up on that part of ideology on elections and how it runs. Now, concerning the issue where we have here, I think that the population. Now, I said it's a little bit tricky because for that I agree with Akwen, because the population is caught in between. That is a fact we must accept. There are times that the military will arrive, and then sometimes would molest the population that who said them day, you know said them day. You know said them day. I got a lot of revelations from Batibo there. Then there are times that when the military goes, probably 2 days after, if some Amber fighters are attacked somewhere, the Ambers come back and say, you are the one who has surely given information to the military to move to this area. Whereas it could be a coincidence, you understand. And at the same time, too, you two are forced to pay the price. Probably they take you to the camp. And so it's normal that, as I said earlier from the beginning of this program, that the population are the ones that pay the highest collateral damage in the whole stuff. But now, they are helpless, I must admit, because someone said the population could rise against, they could do this. We have seen, like in Balikumba, population rise sometime, went there, and then the Amber guys ran, went and reinforced, and came back when the population had no gun. And the few guys who were ringleaders of that, they had to pick them up from the house while they were sleeping at night. It was a such scenario. And so at the end of it, we will not want the population to be dragged into getting either to combat the military or to combat the Amber because they don't have arms. Even the case that we had at the Mendankwe, some years, 2 years back, where the vigilante group was set up, and some of the guys came out and said, we will now send Amber out of Bamendankwe. You know that story. I'm talking as a journalist. I covered that event. And 2 weeks after, those guys who were talking were nowhere to be found. They had been killed already by the Amber guys who came and met them in their own houses, and they were nowhere to defend themselves. So if we want to look at it, the population is vulnerable. But I will not want us to put them to be caught in between, because we will surely put them into more problems because they have had more than enough, and they are still having more than enough houses burnt and all the like, and the damages are so much. In Bonaberi, my neighborhood, I tell you every day, just come early in the morning around the park area. See where the people are sleeping. When you go to the popular bars, when the bars are closing, see where some of the guests are hanging around. You will know that what we're talking here, if people go to the field in the evening, this is evening now, in my neighborhood in Bonaberi, you will not believe the things you'll be seeing. So at the end of it, what do we think, Mr. Leon? Why the population cannot help the situation? Because they don't have arms. They are not trained to fight. These guys have been in bushes for 4 years running. The experience they have now with AKs is not the experience you and I can have. Even if you give me an AK now, I will not be able to have that experience. Military, it is their job normally. They have been trained. They go to military academy, do kind of trainings. They are even more professional in that. So at the end of it, the population is helpless. Women, children, they are helpless. That's why you see my main cry in it is that If genuine dialogue is not put in place, we will be repeating the same thing. It's sad that National Assembly sits and they are watching us talk this grammar here, and they are sleeping there in Yaoundé.
Far Mr. Young, you see the population is caught between the separatist fighters and the military. Yeah. The military is on ground and the separatist fighters are also on ground. But this is going on, at least in the leaders, the separatist leaders are very aware of what the population is going through in the hands of the fighters, and the politicians in Yaoundé are also very aware of what is happening down there. Why don't they also strike a balance? Because they want to limit the excesses of both fighting groups down there.
Yeah, let me just come in. The reason why you don't see them coming in is that in the guerrilla warfare, that is static. Guerrilla warfare, what they do is that sometimes civilians act as shield on both sides. I'm very sorry to tell you that.
Okay, so they are using
civilians at a point in time.
Which is bad, yeah.
I'm sorry to tell you, Mr. Leo, in war conflict, when it worst comes to the worst, civilians become shield. Which means I know that if I have Dr. Nick and the rest in front of me, you will not surely want to shoot. Now, on the other side, if the other person has the same Dr. Nick, maybe Akwen and the rest, I too will not want to shoot, because my problem is the person and not the civilians. So sometimes along the line, you discover that with stray bullets that come in, sometimes they are forced to pay the price. It's a bad scenario in war. But that is one of the main characteristics of war, that in conflict, both the military and the guerrilla warfare or the rebels, as we call them, most of the times in war, use civilians as shield, which is too bad. That's why I said that in the course of war, civilians always pay the highest prices, especially elderly, women, and the children, which to us, we think that the only way to address the situation, because there's no way you can guard against it, because why am I saying so, Mr. Leo? Both parties sometimes still need the civilians for information. You get the point. If military gets to an area, if they get to do, if civilians are not there, there's no way they'll be able to operate. They need to get somebody who could tell them that, no, take this shortcut. Now, if the armed to get to another area, they need, if they hear the military has passed somewhere, they need the civilians to tell them, Mama, you don't want to farm. You don't see some people that pass for years, so motor this and that, you know. So at the end of it, the civilians become a tool used by both parties, which is not correct. And then secondly, they use them as shields, which is not correct. At the end of it, they pay the highest price in the whole show, which is a call for concern as we speak.
Okay, Ngo Z, watching from Boya, has this to say. You react to it again, Dr. Nick. He says, good evening, Mr. Leonard. Thanks very much for the wonderful program. When truth is not told, we can't resolve the ongoing conflict in Cameroon. We must adopt traditional peace-building mechanisms by restoring the traditional authority to their rightful positions to better manage their people.
I see, yeah, she says truth must be told, right? And that's right, because like the Bible says, know the truth and the truth shall set you free. And it doesn't matter what the subject matter is, it is only the truth that sets free. And you know, if you don't know the truth about anything, it would take away your peace. More often than not, you know, people will be spending sleepless nights or something, you're suffering from anxiety and so on. It's because there is some truth that you are not coming to terms with. And once you're in a bad situation and you can put your finger on the truth and then, you know, bow to that truth and do what that truth says, then you'll be free. So the war we are having is because there is no truth. The war we are having is because both sides, everybody is running away from the truth. And if we could all go to that truth in love, the problem will be solved. And once we have solved the problem and then we build back our traditional societies, those chieftaincies and so on, and give back their power and so on, and we go back to the way we have been living traditionally, of course everything will come back to normal. But this person from Boya, or is it from Limbe, has put the nail, the hammer on the nail. She says the issue is the truth. know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. But the bottom line is, when people want to commit crimes, they're always trying to change the truth. Everybody pulls the blanket onto his side to give the impression that they got the truth. No, you can't color the truth. You cannot color the truth. You can't bury the truth. You can't do anything to the truth. The truth is just truth. And if you can twist it now, but 20 years down the road, it's going to pop up. And therefore, when you really want to solve problems and you are genuine means you are truthful to the circumstances and to yourself and to God, then you just let that truth to prevail. Though sometimes it's going to hurt your ego. But once we've been talking about dialogue, reconciliation, unity in the nation.
Yeah, but
it is going to be about that truth.
There you are reacting to Z out there in Boya. The question I have for you is, are we not also missing the point because we are not making use of conflict resolution experts? There are people who are trained in this, and we are in a conflict for 4 or 5 years, and we are not seeing either the separatists using those who are champions in, who are experts, core experts in conflict resolution, who are giving the way out and on the government bench.
That's right. That's the bottom line. You see, when you want to hide the truth, when you don't want to solve a problem, you use charlatans. And it's not because someone is a minister or something. No. Let me rephrase the whole thing. There's an adage which says that a problem cannot be solved at the level at which it was created. What do I mean? We go to class 2 or to form 2, give the children a mathematical problem that is just slightly above their thinking capacity. They will not solve it. Drop that problem to their level and they solve it. But take that same problem from class 2 and take it to class 7 and the problem is solved. So now you understand a problem can never be solved at the level at which it was created. So we have problems that we cannot solve because we don't understand conflict management procedures and the principles. And it's not because President Paul Biya calls you minister of what that you have what it takes to solve it. Even if you're the prime minister, you can be the prime minister and you sit there and say, look, I'm the prime minister to coordinate this meeting, but I don't master the principles. And then you now call in the experts. You can do. You can even talk in the back office. You say, okay, in this kind of a situation, what are the steps? What is step 1, step 2, step 3? Why do we do step 1 and step 2? Why can't we skip step 2 and do 3? And they will explain this thing to you just so that you know what happens. Then you bring them on board so that when they are leading the discussions or trying to help you, you know what you are doing. And it's not like we don't have those experts in Cameroon. We have them. We have one Professor Nzengwa.
Yes.
We have Professor Nzengwa and another professor, the one in our group, Joseph. So Christopher. I know too. Right? And you remember we had some Northwest, Southwest Peace something. Yeah. And you remember we had this meeting in a hotel in Sawa. Yeah, and that is when I got to know how important these people were, because we were very blank when we were going there. We were just going there with our emotions as everyone else. But when Professor took time, so Christopher took time off to give us a lecture, and we asked the questions and we learned and we said, wow, this sounds great. Give this problem to these 2 guys and the problem will be solved overnight. We just keep turning around circles and so on. No, you could be appointed. I don't care which minister you are. If you don't have it, you've not got it.
Okay. Yes. Now, I don't know whether I will get to you. Are we suffering from a trust crisis in Cameroon? Is that not also a core problem that needs to be fixed? Nobody seems to trust anybody. That is why at the mention of any name with the hope of or with the objective of wanting to solve this problem, the first thing that comes to the minds of people is that he or she has been given some money to corrupt people. Once you talk in line of wanting to solve this problem, as we are doing this program, many persons are writing that certainly we have been given money to do this program. There is it's difficult to convince people that people would want to to solve this problem?
Yes, Mr. Kom, before I answer your question, there is one sender that sent a message saying that we need to put in place, give back the past to our traditional rulers for these problems to be solved. You will tell me what's happening in the Northwest and Southwest. We see that most of our chiefs are being kidnapped. So today you see that our Cameroonian chiefs no longer have value. So even if you give them, you know, that power to be able to, you know, help solve the problems, these boys will not listen to them. Neither would the government listen to them, because at one point the government had to tell some traditional rulers to leave politics and go back to the farm. So I think that that problem that they say we need to give power to the traditional rulers cannot really work, because they have lost their values on both sides. And talking about trust, you know, trust has flown away from the minds of Cameroonians. Even in our homes today, it's difficult to have trust amongst ourselves, because, you know, Cameroonians have that mentality of famemanship, and the government too has, you know, has polluted the Cameroonians' mentality of bribery and corruption. It has become like something normal in Cameroon. If you are not, you know, you do not practice bribery and corruption, you are not normal. It is very normal in Cameroon. When you go to some institutions, you need to give money before something happens. That is why you see most Cameroonians are doubtful. Whatever happens, they are doubtful. That is why you see, even if the government today calls for a genuine dialogue, as Mr. Fai said, there are still people who say we are not sure of this. We are not sure that this can happen. And on the other side, the separatist fighters too will say we are not sure that the government wants to solve the problem. You know, there is that doubt that has been embedded in the minds of Cameroonians, because naturally Cameroonians are very corrupt in nature. Cameroonians are like that because it has been practiced from the top, because the top is corrupt. You know, Mr. Kom, to have a position in Cameroon right now, you need to have a godfather. You need to bribe. You need to do this and do that. All these has, you know, been engraved in the minds of Cameroonians, that they do not believe anybody. They do not believe anything. Whatever you say to them, they say this is not true. So I think that that problem of trust, that problem of, you know, not trusting each other is too a great hindrance for the solving of these problems. Because, Mr. Kom, we can have some genuine people who are still from the separatist side, you know, that really wants the Cameroon or the Anglophone problems to come to an end. But no one will believe them, because amongst themselves they fight each other. They do not understand themselves. And so in the government, we can still have, you know, some genuine people who can bring solutions to be able to solve these problems, but no one will believe them, because that doubt has been, you know, implanted in the minds of every Cameroonian, from the young to the old, and everybody is doubtful, and that problem needs to be solved. And for it to be solved, we need to reconcile. We need to practice love, because if you do not love your neighbor, you will doubt him. But if you love me, you will not doubt me. If I come for a genuine forgiveness, and if the government says I am sorry, you know, at one point, and start to, you know, bring out actions that shows that they are really sorry, I think that the other parties will remove that doubtful manner in them, or that doubtful thoughts in them. So I think we need reconciliation, forgiveness, and you know, love.
Good evening, Mr. Leo, Dr. Nick, and Mr. Fa. I want to laud the efforts of and contributions of Madame Akwen. She is very consistent and objective with her arguments. Reverend Father Bertus Asanji, writing there from Bamenda. Good evening to you, Reverend Father. Fa Elvis Tayong. Has the church also helped to bridge the gap between both sides? Are they also working so hard to bring both sides to agree on how to end this crisis? Or you think that the church has not been given an opportunity to do so?
Well, I think that for the church, they are doing their own part the way they can. Probably interjecting with the issue of the person with the traditional rulers. You know, just two things are there. The traditional rulers cannot be, just like I'm queuing in what Akwen said, the traditional rulers normally cannot play any role, because the government damaged the traditional rulers himself. You know, the 1977 law that was attributing the functions of the traditional rulers. When you say they are auxiliaries, you automatically place them as underdogs, whereas they are the ones who were even to be placed at the forefront than the GEOs, because they understand the people, their culture, and how they can take them and work with them vis-a-vis with the administration. But when you say they are auxiliaries, automatically you weaken them. Two, when you put them into politics, you destroy the whole thing. I've said several times that traditional rulers are not supposed to be into partisan politics, because as a traditional ruler, you are a father for all. CPDM, CRM, PCRN, and all the like. But now, when you sit and you start arrogating, as many of them have been brought over into the CPDM, you see that trust. So I was just trying to give that interjection. Now, for the issue of, we're talking about church. The church, yeah. I think the church normally, from the beginning, the church was pivotal, played a significant role, I must be honest with you. I talk about the church. I want to cue in, especially with the Roman Catholic Church. The others are dancing Bafia dance. I'm very sorry. I will say that, Mr. Liu. The others are dancing Bafia dance. The cardinals and the bishops have suffered more in this crisis.
They have been kidnapped.
They have been kidnapped, and they have always been outspoken. I said the other churches are dancing Bafia dance. I am Presbyterian Church, PCC. We are dancing Bafia dance. So, what am I saying, Mr. Liu? You know, we should call a spade a spade.
What do you mean by dancing Bafia dance?
Bafia dance is that
have they not been praying for an end?
Mr. Liu, we are speaking water in our mouths. We are speaking water in our mouths. I came here sometime and I said on this platform, the church is supposed to do even more. Why do I say so? Most of these ministers and elites are members of the church. I mean, front benchers of these churches, Mr. Liu. Why do you think that a reverend father, a pastor, cannot call director A, elite A or elite B? Please, but I saw your outing last night, it was not good. Why don't you really say that this thing is, why do you say the thing is under control when some of my Christians have been kidnapped? Mr. Leo, the error the church forgets is that most of those who have been killed, displaced, are their Christians. And these are the people who have been contributing for the growth of the church wherever the churches are. You understand something I told you, that most of the churches have disappeared from the hinterlands to Douala and Yaoundé. If you tell them now go back to Kwakwa, they will not go. Because the money they have seen in Douala, Mr. Leo, you cannot tell the pastor go back to Kwakwa and run a congregation, he will go. Except the mainstream churches, because they have a way they are functioning, you understand? I'm talking about these other ones that are coming, they call them Pentecostal and all the like. It is a fact, that's the truth, Mr. Leo. So, if, for example, go to Bastos in Yaoundé, for example, or Baptist Church, Tugebe and all the like, high-profile government officials are in these churches. What does it cost for some of these pastors of press, Catholic, Baptist, Pentecostal to come together and look for the common front to get these guys to them, and then give them real dogma of Christianity, so that they should not, because they're the ones who are acting otherwise. Because a man gives 2 million in church project, 10 million in church project, you cover him up as a man of God, and the next day he's on the field lying that the issue is under control when people are dying. Mr. Leo, the churches have done their part, but not good enough. But if I take it comparative wise, Catholic Church, you have tried your best. The people, in fact, the priests have suffered. The rest are dancing Bafia dance. They know what I'm talking about. So at the end of it, Mr. Leo, it's not an issue of a government minister and Ellie to come and give you envelope and you stay quiet. Churches should leave the issues. It's not politics, Mr. Leo. Yeah, but and call a spade a spade.
I think are you not so hard on them? The churches have been organizing prayers day in, day out to pray for peace to return.
Mr. Leo, I am talking to before God and man. They are acting drama. They should hear me very well. They are acting drama. Mr. Leo, there's what they call church diplomacy. Those who have done theology understand what I'm talking about. There are some things that you can move to a person concerned directly. It pays you nothing to get some of the pastors, even in an association. You visit A, you talk to him, you pray with him. By the time you are coming back, his mentality will not be the same as you are calling community services.
They should not be praying in churches. Mr.
Leo, the prayers is not the issue, but they think that the prayers will give the solution. Mr. Leo, what about church diplomacy here? It's part of the course they are doing in theology, and most of them know about what I'm talking about. Okay. So if you cannot call a minister to tell him that, please, last time you spoke, you told lies on air, it's not good. I think that you should have said like this, because they are supposed to be spiritual counselors to these people. Mr. Leo, why is it that the ministers, the elites themselves are doing their worst, lying day in, day out, mayors lying, senators lying, parliamentarians lying, and all of them are bona fide members of one church or the other? It means something is wrong. I am acting as an eye-opener. Church leaders, if you like to take it, take it. You work for the interests, and the kingdom of God will be good. If you want to take it as a problem, it's a cup of tea. Call these politicians who are causing these problems to your various angles. We don't need to know. Don't bring media. Talk to them. Pay trouble. Go to Yaoundé. Meet a minister. Meet a director. Please, preach to him or her. Before you know it, the truth will, you'll just be finding a solution. Because if these ministers and the elites and all the like had the fear of God, Mr. Leo, I don't think that we'll be jubilating. We take a corpse, we put at the junction, at Bisset junction, children are watching, and we are jubilating and popping champagne, over a even if it's the hardest criminal.
Are you saying that separatists don't need prayers? They don't also need their attention?
Mr. Leo, they need attention. But where is the situation? It is easier for a man of God to meet a government official because you know where he is than a separatist fighter. I'm talking, that's the truth. Okay. If you say you want to go to the bush, you don't know that you can arrive at the time when his temperament is different. And he takes you as a collateral damage. Or he sees you as a spy, he calls you a black leg. But if you live here, Pastor A, Reverend Pastor this, Reverend Doctor this, Reverend Professor this, Reverend Father this, and you are going to meet a director, you can go 2 or 3 of you, so you should not be corrupted. Because if you go you alone, he can give you an envelope of 5 million for transport. And you come back and the grammar changes. Because these elites give money to these pastors. That's why the pastor, when they climb on pulpit, they stay quiet. Peace, peace, peace on earth. When you know the person to tell him that, please, we need peace. Leave that grammar aside. Oh. Don't take God and be playing politics. I'm sorry to be very hard, but the men of God, they know what I'm talking about. That is the gospel truth. We need a revival in this country. Mr. Leo, I told you several times, in Nigeria, even when the Biafra crisis was going on, most of the men of God rallied and got governors. So even prophesied, if you don't do this, you will die the next minute. And governors stood up and started telling me, you understand? Why can it not be in our own case whereby a man will call a spade and tell a government officer, please, I think that the Bible, because you should talk with scriptural backings. If you don't, you are there to serve the people. But if you cannot do this, do that. Call even the amber fighters. If you cannot put it on phone or on social media, you give messages directed to them. See if you cannot get to them directly. Mr. Leo, it will help us solve. We need the church more than ever than before. But if the church watches, those who are being killed, be they military, they belong to a church. Be they amber fighters, they belong to a church. Be they civilians, they belong to a church. And that's why I said that as the church stays quiet, God too will hold them responsible, come rain, come sun.
Okay. Okay, yes.
We have to understand that the church and our leaders, they have no guns. And they have the moral authority. They show us the way. And you know, people would only align with what the church says if they believe in what you're teaching. If we're talking about the church, if you have elites in government or wherever who don't believe in God, if they don't believe in God, then you have no moral authority over them, because the only authority you have over them is to preach the love of God and the ways of God to them, to teach them kingdom principles. But they could be in church, but they are probably they probably bow to other gods, some exoteric things and so on and so forth, where from Monday to Friday there were those exoteric things, and then on Sunday they show up in church as Christians, you know, Sunday Christians. Those ones, the church cannot have any hold on them. The church has no grip on them. So it doesn't have to do with the church itself, but it has to do with the quality of our elites. What is their belief system? What is their worldview? Whom do they believe in? Do they really believe in God? And do they see themselves as children of God, or they believe in some other paths? You know, some of them who are ministers and so on, they have to go to some marabouts to. If they always sleep at the marabout, there's nothing that the cardinal can tell them. So we need to know who they are. And then something happened at the beginning of the Anglophone crisis that killed the power of the church. Two things. The first one that I would mention, which is regrettable up till today, is to look at what happened to His Eminence Christian Cardinal Toomey. See his standing, see his age, see his wisdom, and he says, look, I want to organize my Anglophone brothers so that we can go to Boya, talk over this thing, and we come and speak to the government in one voice so that this problem can be solved without much damage. And what happened? You know, the government, you know, sends word through Mayor Kmer to ridicule the cardinal. That was not fair. That was not fair. And you who sent message through Kmer to ridicule the cardinal, you thought you won. You only made yourself stupid. And because of that, a lot of people have died. And you're going to pay. Be sure. You pay. Then, so, because if we had followed what the cardinal was saying, this problem would have been solved. Then, to add insult to injury, our boys out there, because of their greed and their power and so on, and they started to insult the cardinal. And you thought you were winning. Here we are today. and you know what? You're going to pay. Then there was an issue of children not going to school, and the government, harassed the church and so on. That harassment didn't go down very well, and so we've had all of these things and so on. But the bottom line is, everybody is going to pay. Thank you.
Okay, everybody is going to pay. Where we are today, you get information from the field on what people are going through. There is going to be a special program here to give testimonies of how difficult it is for families to go bury their loved ones. Very shocking story. Going down to bury a family member now is becoming a big project, because you need to settle many controls to be able to go down there. But what should be done by the separatists and the government now to find a common ground for the sake of the people?
Well, Mr. Combe, like I previously said in the beginning of this program, I said they need to practice what we call compromise. We need compromise, we need tolerance, and we need love. Because if the need to find a common ground to solve this problem, if there is no compromise, when I talk of compromise, it means even if you're right, because the separatist fighters says they are right, they have been marginalized, they have been this and that. Yes, we understand all that, but you can compromise for the sake of the lives of those that are dying. And the government too, they say no one is above the government, no one is above the state, and they cannot give up, they cannot put out their arms. Like I heard one CPDM general saying on a plateau, he openly said, who is supposed to drop arms? Is it the government or the separatist fighters? That is not a good declaration, because if you want solutions, you need to compromise. Both parties need to go on a ceasefire. That is what I think. And I think that if they do not compromise, this cannot happen. The government is not supposed to say, I must win. You cannot win the state. No one can ever win the state. If you continue having that mentality, you will not win. The separatist fighters, we are right. We have been marginalized, our resources are taken from us and all that. People are dying. Compromise for the sake of those children, compromise for the sake of those mothers, compromise for the sake of those houses, people that have died and all that. And secondly, when I talk about forgiveness, both parties need to forgive each other, because both parties have committed a lot of harm. They have destroyed lives. They have killed people, and if they refuse to forgive each other, nothing can happen. Because if you do not forgive me, you cannot compromise. If you do not forgive me, we cannot look for a solution. If you do not forgive me, we cannot sit on a round table and talk about the solutions to the problems. And thirdly, we need to practice what we call tolerance. When I talk of tolerance, I mean, if I do something that is not really pleasant to you, just tolerate me. You can tolerate me, and later you can look for a way to tell me what you did was wrong. It is very, very important. But if we continue using anger, we continue using hatred, we continue using greed, all this cannot help us. And I think that that is the problem we are having, because the major hindrance to this is greed. Everybody is greedy. Everybody is interested in the wealth they are making, the economic gain, the influence, the power, and all that. Like, I heard Mr. Fai saying we are having some separatist fighters that were bike riders, and today they are generals. They have this power, this influence, they control money. That is greed. They will not abandon that for anything. But if they decide to compromise for the sake of the lives of those that have been lost, for the sake of peace, I think that we're going to have a solution to end the Anglophone crisis, Mr. Combe.
Pastor Bache says, please, for Dr. Nick's number from Kumba. Pastor Bache, I'll send the number to you. You say, Mr. Leo, good evening. It's been long. Greetings to Dr. Nick. Pastor Bache writing from Kumba. He got your message already. Good evening. This is Kingsley from Bamenda. I like your program. Please just let everyone know that this is end time, where only the truth shall save us. For those that are lying, hellfire is awaiting them. Thanks. Okay. Godfrey, it's difficult to read the messages. Yes. What is the way out? How do we get parties to a common ground?
Yes, the only way to get the parties to common ground is one. A third party is needed, whether we like it or not, because of the existence of breach of trust. Point number 2. The next way forward will require a ceasefire declared under a convivial atmosphere, which will not be accompanied by arrogance, meaning that the government gets to the other separatist fighters leaders and they begin to talk at the backstage, because in conflict resolution there's what we call front and backstage movements, because all of them are important. Before something comes in front, there are many things that have taken place at the backstage. So that one to give birth to peace, to what we call a ceasefire, is required. Then the third thing will be for the government to take a bold step in talking to the separatist fighters, thereby bringing down their ego and asking them to propose a venue for a genuine dialogue. Once this is done, it should also be agreed by both parties, so that one party like separatists should not also impose on the government, you understand? It should be a third party that's accepted by both of them. Once that is done, with a venue decided, the next thing the government should do is that instead of the over 10 billion francs CFA that was wasted in the so-called Yaoundé family CPD meeting, the name of what we call dialogue. Now, Yaoundé now should get that kind of budget, talk with them, with the fighters, or talk with the leaders. Even those who don't have money, Yaoundé should even decide to pay their bills to where they will meet. It's all what we need but the peace. They should show us some of their bills if they cannot come, so that they see it more joining with the third party. Once this is done, the next thing will be that after that phase of a convivial environment, the dialogue phase should be put without any taboo subject put in place. I want to say it clearly. For any genuine dialogue to take place, it will never hold in Cameroon. That one is clear. That is the principle of conflict resolution. And at the end of it, when all of this is done, Mr. Leo, the last thing for the government to do will be to put in place a reconciliation commission now. All these things, national dialogue, are all zero. Bilingualism commission, those ones are waste of money, and in fact, they are not news. The government will now put in place a reconciliation team that will comprise of even members proposed by the other camp and the government. Once this is put in place, then we'll now discover that, because peace is a process, Mr. Leo. As I'm blowing grammar here, does not mean that it ends already. It's a process that heals over time, with the reconciliation and all the like. And then the next thing now is, that's where they can now bring in the issue of the reconstruction. I hear there's reconstruction. That's where you can now bring it in.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I just want to say that, Mr. Elvis, he just broke it down to us so that we understand the processes. I was talking about working on principles. He didn't invent it. He read it in university, and that's how it is. You cannot invent it. When we went to the major national dialogue, we invented it and tried to do it a la Cameroonese. That's why it failed. And this time around, there's going to be another dialogue. I said I have my crystal ball here. When I look at it and see, I'm seeing that President Pobia, I can see him. He's saying that he wants reconciliation and unity in the nation. And that reconciliation and unity in the nation, if you listen to Far very well, is the end result. So there is this big thing called reconciliation and unity in the nation. But to have that reconciliation and unity in the nation, watch my lips, we are going to do exactly what Far Elvis said. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and no one is going to skip it. There's not going to be issue of party discipline and so on. Either you do it the way it's done internationally or not, because people have died. We are not going to have people come to a dialogue table and begin to play games. Time for games is over. And there must be peace in Cameroon, there must be reconciliation, there must be unity in Cameroon, and that's what President Paul Biya wants now more than anyone else. Okay. And no one is going to joke with it. And again, just before you take the microphone, like I said, when the dialogue starts and all these things start, everybody is going to toe the line. If you don't toe the line, it doesn't matter where you are on earth, you'll be nailed. Okay, we want to thank you, Dr. Nick, for coming. Thank you very much. And also to you, Ba Ekwen, for coming. And the kangaroo man, thank you for coming. Yes, it's my pleasure. While hoping that the kangaroo system sits up, but then they cannot solve this problem. They should just go on leave, pack their bags and leave it to D. We need a new Cameroon to solve this problem. Thank you. We also want to thank you all who took time off to watch the program in and out of Cameroon, and to you, Desmond and Eli, Bertrand and Noel at the broadcasting. We want to say thank you to you too, Tabi.
Tambe Bryant, who is supervising the work we do out here. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.